My windshield wipers couldn't keep up. I'd been driving for hours, lost on a back road in Pennsylvania, when I saw the flickering neon sign. Vacank. The last letter was missing, so it just glared at me like a broken promise. My car choked and stalled right there in the parking lot. Perfect. I sighed, gripping the wheel. There was no way I could sleep in the car in this weather. I grabbed my bag, pulled my coat tight around me, and ran through the downpour toward the motel office. The place smelled like old coffee and wet carpet. Behind the counter sat a man with a scar that ran down his neck like a zipper. He didn't smile. "Room 12's the only one with heat," he said, sliding a key across the desk. His hands trembled, and I wondered if he was sick or scared. The room was straight out of a bad movie. Flowery wallpaper curling at the edges, a lumpy bed, and a painting above the dresser of a red barn with its door half open. Something about that barn made my skin prickle. Had I seen it before? I pushed the thought away. The storm howled outside. I lay on the bed, exhausted, when I heard it thump, thump, against the wall. Voices, a woman crying. "Please, I didn't mean to," she whimpered. A man's voice cut in, low and angry. "You'll wreck it all." My heart pounded. Should I call the police? I grabbed my phone, no signal. Of course. I tiptoed back to the office, but it was dark. The scarred man was gone. Back in my room, I noticed a corner of the wallpaper peeling off. Behind it was a metal panel. My fingers fumbled, and it creaked open. Inside were newspaper clippings. Local woman vanishes after late-night diner shift. Police suspect foul play in decade-old mystery. And then I saw it, a photo of me, younger, dyed black hair, standing outside a diner. The same diner from the articles. The same night the woman disappeared. No, this couldn't be real. 10 years ago, I'd made a terrible mistake. A fight, a shove, a girl hitting her head on the edge of a table. I'd buried her in an old barn and ran, changed my name, my life. But here it was staring back at me, that barn painted above the bed. A knock at the door. I froze. The scarred man stood there, flashlight in hand. "Heat or trouble," he said, but his eyes flicked to the open panel on the wall. "It's fine," I muttered, blocking his view. He hesitated, then left, but not before giving me a look that made my stomach twist. Minutes later, another knock. A woman stood there, soaked from the rain, her wrist bruised. "Please," she begged. "My husband, he's gonna kill me. There's a payphone down the road. Help me call the cops?" I didn't want to get involved, but her tears felt familiar, like looking in a mirror. "Okay," I said. "Let's go." We ran through the storm, mud splashing up our legs. The payphone was covered in rust, but it worked. She dialed 911. "Yes, I'm at the Pineview Motel, room 11. Hurry." Then she turned to me, her face suddenly calm. "They're coming, Adam." My old name hit me like a slap. How did she know? "You don't remember me?" she said, her voice sharp. "I was the waitress, the one who gave you extra coffee that night, the one who watched you leave with my little sister." The pieces crashed together. The diner, the fight, the barn, her sister. That man, she pointed to the motel, where the scarred man stood in the rain, a shotgun in his hands. "That's my dad, and tonight you're going to confess." Sirens wailed in the distance. I turned to run, but the woman grabbed my arm. "You've been running too long," she hissed. I pulled free, but headlights blinded me as police cars skidded to a stop. Officers spilled out, guns drawn. The scarred man lowered his gun, tears mixing with the rain on his face. "You took my daughter," he said. "Now you'll tell the truth." It was a rainy day in Los Angeles, the kind that makes you want to stay indoors, curl up with a good book, and forget the world outside. But I, Jake Henderson, didn't have that luxury. I was a sales rep, and my job required me to be on the road, even on days like this. I had just wrapped up a long week of client meetings, and all I wanted was to get home, kick off my shoes, and unwind. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. As I drove down the interstate, the rain began to pour harder, blurring my vision and forcing me to slow down. My wipers were working overtime, but they could barely keep up. I squinted at the road ahead, trying to make out the signs. I was still a good 100 miles from home when my car suddenly sputtered and died. I managed to pull over to the side of the road, cursing under my breath. I tried to start the car again, but the engine just clicked feebly. I was stranded. I popped the hood and got out, the rain immediately soaking my clothes. I'm no mechanic, but I knew enough to check the obvious. After fiddling around for a bit, I concluded that it was beyond my expertise. I needed help. I grabbed my phone from the car and dialed roadside assistance. No signal. I cursed again, shoving my phone back into my pocket. I looked around, trying to spot a tow truck or even a fellow motorist who could help. But the road was deserted. Everyone else, it seemed, had the good sense to stay indoors. I saw a sign for a motel a few miles ahead. It was my best bet. I grabbed my bag from the back seat, locked the car, and started walking. The rain pelted down, and I was soaked to the bone within minutes. But I trudged on, the promise of a warm, dry room keeping me going. Finally, I saw the neon sign of the motel flickering in the distance. It was old and run down, the kind of place you'd normally drive right past. But at that moment, it was a beacon of hope. I hurried towards it, pushing open the heavy door to the reception. The man behind the desk looked up as I entered, dripping water onto the worn carpet. He was an older guy, maybe in his 60s, with a name tag that read L. He gave me a once-over, taking in my drenched state, then silently slid the register towards me. I filled it out quickly, my teeth chattering from the cold. Al handed me a key, an actual key, not a card, and pointed me towards my room. I thanked him and hurried back out into the rain, eager to get into a hot shower. The room was small and outdated, but it was clean and dry. I stripped off my wet clothes, turned the shower on as hot as it would go, and stepped in, letting the water wash away the chill. After my shower, I felt almost human again. I turned on the small TV in the room, flipping through the channels until I found a local news station. I watched absently as I dried my hair with a towel, only half paying attention. But then, something caught my eye. A breaking news alert flashed across the screen. A man had escaped from a nearby prison. He was considered armed and dangerous, and he was last seen heading in this direction. My heart began to pound. I turned up the volume, listening intently as the reporter described the man. He was tall, with a distinctive tattoo on his neck, a snake swallowing its own tail. I tried to reassure myself that the chances of him being anywhere near here were slim. But still, I couldn't shake the feeling of unease. I decided to call the front desk, to ask Al if he'd heard anything. But when I picked up the phone, there was no dial tone. I jiggled the buttons, but nothing happened. The phone was dead. I felt a prickle of fear. I grabbed my cell phone, remembering too late that it had no signal. I was cut off. I paced the room, trying to decide what to do. I couldn't just sit here, not knowing if that man was out there. I had to get back to the reception, to Al. He would have a phone, a way to contact the police. I pulled on my clothes, still damp from the rain, and stepped out into the night. The rain had eased off slightly, but the wind had picked up, howling through the trees and sending a chill down my spine. I hurried towards the reception, my heart pounding in my chest. As I approached, I noticed something strange. The light in the reception was off. Al was nowhere to be seen. I pushed open the door, the bell above it jingling loudly in the silence. I called out Al's name, but there was no response. I stepped behind the desk, looking for a phone, but it was gone. The register was gone too. It was as if Al had just vanished. I felt a surge of panic. Something was very wrong here. I needed to get out to find help. I turned to leave, and that's when I saw him. A tall figure, standing in the doorway, blocking my exit. He had a tattoo on his neck, a snake swallowing its own tail. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. He stepped towards me, a slow, menacing smile spreading across his face. I looked around desperately, searching for a weapon, anything I could use to defend myself. But there was nothing. I was trapped. But then, something strange happened. The man reached into his pocket and pulled out a wallet. He flipped it open, revealing a badge. "Police," he said, his voice low and steady.
I'm undercover.
"I've been tracking the escapee. He's been spotted near here. I need your help." I stared at him, my mind racing. This wasn't what I'd expected. But then, nothing about this night had been expected. I took a deep breath, trying to calm my pounding heart. I nodded, ready to do whatever I could to help. But that's when I noticed something. A small detail that sent a shiver down my spine. The badge was fake. The tattoo wasn't a snake swallowing its own tail. It was a snake with its jaws wide open, ready to strike. And the man wasn't a police officer. He was the escapee. I realized too late that I had fallen right into his trap. I turned to run, but he was too quick. He lunged at me, and everything went black. When I came to, I was tied to a chair in my motel room. The escapee was sitting on the bed, watching me. He smiled when he saw I was awake. "Sorry about the deception," he said, his voice casual, as if we were just having a friendly chat. But I needed to buy some time. I struggled against my bonds, but it was no use. I was trapped. I felt a surge of panic, but I tried to stay calm. I needed to think, to find a way out of this. "What do you want?" I asked, my voice steady despite the fear coursing through me. He shrugged. "Just a place to lay low for a while, and someone to keep me company." He smiled again, and it sent a chill down my spine. I knew I had to do something. I couldn't just sit here, waiting for whatever he had planned. I looked around the room, searching for anything that could help me, and that's when I saw it. A small, forgotten detail that just might save my life. The room phone, the one I thought was dead, had a single blinking light. There was a message. I kept the escapee talking, trying to distract him as I inched the chair closer to the phone. It was slow going, but he didn't seem to notice. He was too busy talking about his plans, about how he was going to start a new life. I just needed to get to that phone to press that blinking light. Finally, after what felt like hours, I was close enough. I leaned over, straining against my bonds, and pressed the button. The message played loudly in the silent room. It was Al, his voice tense and urgent. "Jake, if you're there, don't trust the man with the snake tattoo. He's not who he says he is. I've called the police. They're on their way." The escapee's face darkened. He lunged at me, but it was too late. The sound of sirens filled the air, growing louder by the second. He turned to run, but he didn't get far. The police burst into the room, guns drawn. They tackled him to the ground, cuffing him as he struggled. I sat there, stunned, as the police untied me. I couldn't believe it was over. I looked up at Al, who had entered the room behind the police. He gave me a small nod, a look of relief on his face. "How did you know?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "I saw the news," he said, "and I saw him lurking around the motel. I knew something was off, so I called the police and then I tried to warn you. But the phone lines were cut. All I could do was leave a message and hope you'd find it." I shook my head, still in disbelief. "Thank you," I said, my voice filled with gratitude. "You saved my life." Al just nodded, a small smile on his face. "Just doing my job," he said. As the police led the escapee away, I couldn't help but feel a sense of relief. It was over. I was safe. I looked out at the rain still pouring down outside. It was a miserable night, but it could have been so much worse. I was lucky to be alive, and lucky to have someone like Al looking out for me. As I gathered my things, ready to finally go home, I knew one thing for sure. I would never forget this night. The rain in Yorkshire, England, is a constant companion. It was a dreary, persistent drizzle that clung to everything, turning the moors a bruised purple. Daniel, was no stranger to such weather. I am a travel journalist, and I frequently find myself exploring the less trodden paths of Britain. My current assignment? A story on the isolated, often overlooked, beauty of the Yorkshire Dales. The day had been long, the driving arduous. I'd been chasing a particular story, a remote farmstead that was rumored to be haunted. Didn't find anything particularly spooky, but it was getting late. The fog was thickening, and the wind was howling. I decided to cut my losses and find a place to stay for the night. That's how I ended up at the Moorland Motel. It was a small, unassuming building, tucked away on a lonely stretch of road. The neon sign flickered, promising vacancy, its tired glow barely cutting through the gloom. I pulled in, hoping for a warm meal and a good night's sleep. Inside, the reception area was sparsely decorated. The woman behind the counter, a stout woman with tired eyes and a pinched mouth, barely glanced up as I approached. She handed me a key, pointing silently towards room 12. No smiles, no pleasantries, just a key. The room was basic, dingy with a faint smell of damp and disinfectant. A faded floral wallpaper, a threadbare carpet, and a single, creaking bed. I dumped my bag, grateful for the shelter, and decided to grab a quick bite at the motel's diner. It was deserted, save for an elderly man hunched over a newspaper at the counter. He looked up as I entered, giving me a long, unnerving stare before returning to his paper. I ordered a burger, and I ate in silence, the only sound the hiss of the fryer and the drumming of the rain. Back in my room, I tried to settle down, but the isolation, the relentless rain, and the strange atmosphere of the motel were getting to me. I started to feel uneasy, a prickling sensation at the back of my neck. I tried to push the feeling aside, chalking it up to fatigue. I eventually drifted into an uneasy sleep. Sometime in the early hours of the morning, I was roused by a noise, a soft, rhythmic tapping, coming from the window. My heart leaped in my chest. I lay still, listening intently. Tap, tap, tap. It was a slow, deliberate rhythm. I cautiously got out of bed, my senses on high alert. I peered through the curtains. Outside, the only light came from the pale glow of the motel sign. And then I saw it, a figure standing near my window. It was tall and gaunt, its face obscured by the darkness. It was tapping, softly, rhythmically, on the glass. Fear turned my blood to ice. I stumbled back from the window, my mind racing. I knew I shouldn't be looking or letting them know I was awake. But I was too late. The tapping stopped. Seconds later, there was a knock at the door. A soft, hesitant knock. My stomach lurched. I felt for my phone, my fingers fumbling. "Who is it?" I croaked, my voice barely above a whisper. A man's voice responded, muffled through the door. "Mr. Davies? We need to talk." Davies? My last name is not Davies. I felt a jolt of fear. I slid the chain lock into place. "What do you want?" "We need to talk about the situation," the voice replied. There was a pause. "About the incident at the farm." "The farm? The haunted farm?" There was no way this was a coincidence. The fear turned into ice. I knew something was definitely wrong. "I don't know what you're talking about," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I raised the volume on my phone and called emergency services. The dispatcher answered quickly, and I managed to stammer out a few words, describing the situation, the man outside my door. He told me help was on the way. The man on the other side of the door spoke again, this time his voice taking a slightly aggressive tone. He started trying to convince me that he was there to protect me. I remained silent, waiting for the police. The man did a loud knock and was gone. After a few minutes, the police arrived, and I told them what was happening and provided them with the details of what happened. But when they went outside, the figure was gone. The rain had stopped, and the sky was starting to lighten. There was no sign of anyone. They took my statement, asked a few questions, and checked the perimeter, their flashlights cutting through the morning mist. But there was nothing, no trace of the man, no evidence that anyone had been there. They checked the security cameras, but the system had mysteriously malfunctioned. They left, advising me to lock my door and call them if anything else happened. I was left alone, shaken and bewildered. Sleep was impossible. I was wide awake, adrenaline coursing through my veins. I decided to leave. I packed my bag, got out of the motel. I drove away. I was no longer able to focus on the trip. I had to make sense of this, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something sinister was happening. Back at my flat, I tried to piece everything together. The motel, the man, the farm. It made no sense. I checked my phone records, looking for anything unusual. Then I saw it. A missed call the day before, while I was at the farm. The number was unlisted, and the voicemail, I hesitated, then listened. It was a muffled recording. I could hear wind and the sound of rain. Then, a voice, a distorted voice that sounded vaguely familiar, said, "He's found the wrong thing. He knows too much. Get him." My blood ran cold. The implications were terrifying. The man at the motel, the tapping, the cryptic message. It all pointed to one thing. Someone was watching me. Someone was trying to scare me. I called the farm, and they were happy to reveal the information I was looking for, which was a family, a farmer and his wife who has been living on the farm. They lost their son in the very young age when he was exploring around the area. They told me that the story I heard about the farm wasn't about a ghost, but the story about a child, and that it was a tragic incident in that area. The rain returned, a relentless drumming against my window. I felt trapped, exposed. I checked my camera roll. I started looking at the images and photos I took on the farm. Then, I saw something I hadn't noticed before. In one of the pictures, a photograph of the main house, there was a faint, almost invisible figure in the background, standing in the shadows. It was a tall, gaunt figure, the same figure I saw at the motel. I zoomed in and noticed a specific pattern of markings on the shoulder of the man. I checked for the pattern and was shocked to see the same tattoo on the elderly man in the motel diner. I knew then that the elderly man in the diner was the same figure who came to my room, the same one who had been tapping at my window. It was a setup, a planned attack. But why? What was the incident and why I was in danger? As a journalist, I understood how important the truth was. I needed answers. I needed to go back. To the moor. To the farm. To the motel. I drove back to the motel. I had to know what was going on. The road was empty. The rain continued to fall, and I found myself going to the motel. I reached the diner. It was almost empty, and he was there. The elderly man from the diner, who had been tapping on my window. The man in the image. The man who was responsible for all this. I confronted him. "What do you want?" I asked. The man looked at me, his eyes cold. "You found out about it," he said. "That boy, that missing boy, my son. You found out about it." "What are you talking about?" I asked. He paused. "You heard about the accident on the moor. You found out about the missing boy. You shouldn't have. You were never meant to go to the farm." "Why?" "Because it was a cover-up. They covered up the whole incident. They thought I was a danger," he said. "And you were there." And then I understood. The accident, the boy, the cover-up, the tapping, the motel. The police, the motel, the whole thing. I wasn't the target. I was collateral damage. I was there at the wrong place at the wrong time. The farm, the house is haunted. I thought, no, it's not haunted. They are here. I had no idea who they were, but they have put my life in danger because I saw the incident. I couldn't make sense of it. The man started calling some people on the phone and asked them to come. He smiled with his cold eyes and said, "It's time to deal with you." The old man was just a pawn in a larger, more sinister game. I knew I had to get out of there. Now, I backed away towards the door. The old man said something. I couldn't make it out. As I turned back and ran away, I heard a voice calling my name. "Daniel," I turned, and my face became pale and my eyes froze when I saw a person standing in front of me. It was a woman in a police uniform, and as I got closer to her, she pulled out her gun. I started running. The woman followed me. I ran towards the road. I didn't know where to go, but I didn't have any other options. I ran in the cold, rain, night, and darkness. And finally, I stumbled upon the road. I could hear the woman behind me. I can see headlights approaching me. I yelled as loud as I could for help, and the approaching car stopped and came to my rescue. I was in a state of shock. The woman was nowhere to be seen. The person inside the car was friendly and asked if I am okay. I narrated the whole story, and he looked at me with pity. I can get you home or to the station. As you wish, he told. To the station, I asked. Okay, and then I closed my eyes. The next thing I remember is getting up in the hospital. I had to make a statement. I told the police about everything and that I have the whole story of the incident. The police have investigated the incident, but I was told the whole story of the woman, the old man, the accident, the missing child, the farm, the missing boy. The whole thing was a hoax. That night, I got a call from my phone. The same voice from the motel. The same man. You got it all wrong, he said. The woman wasn't a police officer, but the mother of a child that died due to the police's mistake on the farm, and that she was responsible for killing the boy. She was there. All the things were done by her. I saw her. You saw her. The phone call ended. I was stunned, but the twist was not over. I was shocked. I was in the hospital. I heard a knock on my door. I was scared. It was the woman in the police uniform. She smiled and said, "I got you now." The story ended there. The real twist. As they say in my profession, that is the story. But it is not a ghost story. It is a story of secrets and lies and a truth that is buried deep within the heart of the Yorkshire moors. And the chilling realization that the worst monsters are the ones who walk among us, disguised and undetected.